We can just go live now, do like a minute intro, and then.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to WCBN Sports pre-draft analysis show. My name is Kelin Flynn. Alongside me, William Gregory. We are live from Radio Row here at One Campus Martius in downtown Detroit. Super excited to be here, bringing you live coverage of the NFL Draft. William, we've been doing this for a long time together, and it's really cool to be here as credentialed media and getting to do this with all the big time journalists out here.
Yeah, Big J journos abound here on the 4th floor of One Campus Martius. We thought we'd have a view of the stage. Turns out we don't. So we'll be watching on TV with the rest of you, but we'll be offering our analysis with each pick. We're going to wait about, 15 seconds till we welcome in the FM audience.
Yeah, so big shout-out to everyone tuning in on YouTube to...
Shout out Zachary Linder for boosting us in the studio.
Absolutely. Super fun that we get to be here live in Detroit for the NFL Draft. And with that, we'd like to welcome in our FM audience tuning in from Washtenaw County. You are listening to WCBN FM Ann Arbor. My name's Kelin Flynn, William Gregory, my partner, and we're going to get right into it. The NFL Draft pre-show. William and I have been making mock drafts together for about the last 8 years. Is it 7 or 8?
Since 2017, we've been making mock drafts.
And so we're excited we'll run through our mock drafts. We've got about 30 minutes here to rip through that, and we'll go over some different scenarios we see, especially in the top 10 of the draft, and especially try to highlight some Michigan players, primarily J.J. McCarthy, and where he might land in the draft. So we'll start off with number 1, the Chicago Bears, with the pick that they acquired in last year's draft from the Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers traded up for number 1, giving up their future first-round pick. That ended up being the number 1 overall pick, and the Bears win out in a big way. They're going to get Caleb Williams. He's minus 100,000 per FanDuel to go number 1. William, no surprises there. We both have him go number 1.
Yeah, he's a number 1 overall pick. I mean, I think we can rip through the first 3 guys. Drake May, there's a little bit of contention on whether or not he's going to be New England's pick at 3, but Jaden Daniels certainly going to Washington, and Drake May, the favorite to go to the Patriots at 3. Those 3 quarterbacks to start the draft. Caleb Williams, for sure, the number 1 overall pick.
We've known that for about 2 years now.
Yeah, and he's not, I don't think I describe him as a Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck type guy. Can't miss, generational type of prospect, but he could become that. I think Drake May, to me, fits in the same kind of silo as a player that wouldn't be a consensus number 1 overall pick every year, but has the stuff to possibly become one in the future. It's the same with Caleb.
Do you think if May or Daniels are in last year's draft, they go number 1 over Bryce Young?
I'm not sure. What's so surprising about Bryce Young was that he was 5'10". If he was 5'10", and he still got drafted number 1. Knowing what we knew about C.J. Stroud, I think I probably would have taken Daniels over him. Maybe not Drake May. I don't know. That's always tough to compare draft classes because they're context dependent, and we are biased on what happened during the season. These 3 guys, Williams, Daniels, and May, did not win. Well, they won a couple games, but they weren't on the national stage like the
None of them
quarterback.
have made the college football playoff throughout their careers.
But the 4th quarterback that's going to come off the board, we both have him at number 11, is Michigan's J.J. McCarthy going to Minnesota. A lot of people have predicted a trade up by the Vikings for J.J., but I think both of us think that's not going to be necessary. We think he's going to fall to 11, and they'll just be able to take him there.
And let's talk about that. You talked about how Caleb Williams, surefire number 1, Jaden Daniels has really cemented himself in that number 2 spot to Washington, but New England at 3 is where these trade conversations have really heated up, especially in the last couple of days or so. The Chargers at 5 were that initial spot, but now New England at 3 has been a spot of conversation. There were rumors that the Vikings wanted to move up to 3 to get Drake May. New England likely very happy to stick and pick and take May as well. So that's a spot that you could see a potential trade up. But those three quarterbacks extremely likely to go 1, 2, 3, likely in that order. The only question mark is, will New England be the team picking at number 3? But I think we're pretty confident that we're going to see those guys go off the board in order. After that, moving down to number 4 with Arizona, another potential trade spot, but we both have Marvin Harrison Jr. That's the consensus number 4 overall pick, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. He absolutely dominated college football the last season, and he is the consensus number 1 receiver in this draft, son of the Hall of Famer Marvin Harrison, regarded as one of the best receiver prospects in the last decade, a Jamar Chase, Calvin Johnson type prospect.
Yeah, he's a silky smooth route runner, does a lot at the catch point. I actually controversially have him ranked below Rome Odunze as my number 1 wide receiver. I think Rome Odunze does a little bit more physically that I like to see from my wide receivers. I guess you could say he's got a little more of that dog in him, does Odunze, than Marvin, but you can't go wrong. I mean, I think both those guys, along with Malik Neighbors, maybe not in the same realm for me, could be future multi-time All-Pros. Take a look. If you're on the YouTube broadcast, you can see my top 50 big board that will be further revealed as we go into the first round of the draft in about 2 hours. But after Marvin Harrison Jr., there is some thought that the LA Chargers would take a wide receiver immediately after that. They have nobody in the receiving room after trading Keenan Allen to the Bears, cutting Mike Williams, who's now with the New York Jets.
That receiver room looks like
Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis, and then a whole bunch of guys who's never played.
Josh Palmer still there.
Who's been a guy that's 2 years away from being 2 years away for a long time. But we both have the Los Angeles Chargers emphasizing the running game with their new head coach, Jim Harbaugh, taking Joe Alt, the massive offensive tackle prospect out of Notre Dame.
And Alt regarded as the consensus top tackle in the class. There were some rumors over the last 24 hours that the Alabama tackle, J.C. Latham, was the favorite for this spot. The betting odds have shifted back to having Alt as the favorite, likely if the Chargers stick and pick. But J.J. McCarthy is the odds-on favorite to go number 5. I do not see Jim Harbaugh pulling the trigger on his former quarterback. This is the most popular trade-up spot in the draft. We touched on Minnesota as a team that may want to move up. Right there, Denver at 12 and the Vegas Raiders at 13, also teams in need of quarterback that may be moving up. A little down the board, but less likely, are the Saints and Seahawks as 2 teams that have current quarterbacks but maybe are looking to find that guy for the future. It would be a little more surprising if either of those 2 squads moved up to number 5, but certainly would not be the most shocking thing in the world if either of those 2 teams moved up as well. But we're both in consensus. Alt is the guy if the Chargers do not trade the pick. Moving down to number 6 with the Giants, we are again in consensus here. It's Malik Neighbors out of LSU. Some people have him as their top receiver in this class. The top 3 receivers, it's one of the best top 3s we've ever seen at the receiver position in the last couple of decades.
Yeah, I think Malik Neighbors is fantastic with the ball in his hands. He's so fluid, so fast. He was college football's leading wide receiver, but most of that production came from the slot, and now we see dominant slot receivers in the NFL, but the reason I have Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze ahead of Malik Neighbors is because of their ability to play on the outside more consistently. I just think the ability to play all 3 XYZ receiver positions, to me, is more valuable than Neighbors, who kind of has a specific role. But the Giants, more than happy to walk away with Neighbors, who I think is kind of like a supersized Darius Slayton, fast, a talented wide receiver after the catch. And Joe Shane, their new general manager, I guess he's been there for 2 or 3 years now. The leaks have not really surfaced at all for them. We didn't know at all about them taking Evan Neal, I think 2 years ago. Last year, I forget who they took. But the leaks have not been there for the Giants, but they are in on a wide receiver. A lot of people speculate that they might trade up for J.J. McCarthy, but we both have Malik Neighbors. And that leaves another wide receiver next, the 3rd wide receiver. With Joe Alt off the board, Kellen and I are both in agreement that the Tennessee Titans will select Rome Odunze. Now, a lot of people think if Neighbors falls to them, they'll pick. If Alt's there, they'll pick. But if neither of them are there, they'll trade back wherever they can go, and if they can't trade back, they'll settle for Odunze. I don't know if you have to settle for Odunze. They visited with Odunze twice in the pre-draft cycle. That usually is a good indicator of a team's heavy interest. So they've done their homework on Odunze, and I think he's a very talented football player. 66% of his contested catches he makes. So that means any time that a corner's draped over him, he makes the catch 66% of the time. A really good rate is between 45 and 55%. Most receivers are at like 35 to 40, so 66 is a huge jump. Odunze makes a ton of circus catches. He's so physical. I really love what Tennessee would get with Odunze. He's one of my favorite players in the draft. And they'll continue to build now with Brian Callahan as their new head coach.
Odunze, Michigan fans got to see him in the national championship game. Made a couple of big plays, had a couple of ones that he should have connected on with Michael Penix that they just weren't able to quite sync up. Titans get a big-bodied receiver on the outside to give their new quarterback of last year, Will Levis, a big target to throw to pair with DeAndre Hopkins. And that's a theme you're going to see in the draft. Teams that pick quarterback in this draft or picked a quarterback in last year's draft, they want to get them protection and weapons to help them grow as players. Moving down the board to number 8, we've seen 7 offensive players come off the board in the first 7 picks. And at number 8 is where we finally see that defensive domino fall. We both have it as Dallas Turner, the pass rusher out of Alabama. But a couple of other names have been in the mix there as well. Liatu Latu out of UCLA. Byron Murphy II out of Texas. Also rumored to go to Atlanta at 8. But they need defensive help bad, William, particularly pass rush help. And any of those 3 guys are going to do wonders to help that pass rush.
Yeah, and Latu is second in edge rushers dropping back into coverage only to Dallas Turner this year. New head coach Raheem Morris did a lot of that with the Rams, dropping back those 3-4 edge rushers into coverage. Dallas Turner very familiar with doing that, and he's been linked to the Falcons throughout the process. Of course, you can never truly rely on the consensus, but Turner for me makes too much sense, and Kelin, I think, follows suit. Now here's our first difference. I have at number 9 Byron Murphy II, defensive lineman from Texas, going to Chicago. Kelin has Olu Fashanu, the Penn State offensive tackle. Now I want to flash to my top 50. Byron Murphy is the 8th overall player on my board, above Brock Bowers with some of the injury concerns for Bowers and the lack of run blocking ability. But Bowers, my note that I had on him was that you can feel the power of his strikes from his hands through the film, and it's not often that you see players like that, but like he punches you with his first punch, puts offensive linemen off balance, and he gets in the backfield in a hurry. I just think he is a really multiple interior defensive lineman that can do a lot of different things. He's a little bit on the smaller side, which has brought comparisons to Aaron Donald. He won't be anywhere close to Aaron Donald, and if he is, that's a slam dunk pick. But I think that he can do a lot of those same sort of things, and for that reason, even with Chicago's needs at wide receiver, I think Murphy makes a lot of sense. A lot of coaches are talking about, it doesn't matter if it's an edge rusher or an interior rusher, getting pressure from anywhere is good, and Murphy can do that for the Bears and pair with some of their bigger defensive tackles that they have in Chicago. And Kelin, you can say why you think Fashanu goes there at 9.
Yeah, no pushback on anything you said. With Byron Murphy there, I completely agree. I think he might be the best defensive talent in this class, but to me it comes down to making an investment in your number 1 overall pick at quarterback. The Bears selected Darnell Wright, a tackle in last year's draft. They have the opportunity to pick Olu Fashanu, who many have as the best pass-protecting tackle
pure pass blocker
in this draft. I think that's a excellent opportunity to give your rookie quarterback some blindside protection, really shore up that offensive line, and create a really solid offensive foundation. 2 young tackles, a young quarterback, and some weapons at receiver in Keenan Allen and DJ Moore to get the ball downfield too. I think that's a really great opportunity for the Bears. Completely agree that Murphy's a great prospect, just like the tackle fit overall better for Chicago. Moving on to 10, we're both in lockstep here. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets selecting Brock Bowers out of Georgia, the tight end. I got to see him at the Orange Bowl live a couple years ago when he was a freshman. He's a freak at tight end, no other way to put it. An absolute monster. Great after the catch. Dominates the middle of the field and will wreak havoc wherever he goes in the NFL.
Yeah, he's a game changer. I mean, a lot of people don't like the idea of a top 10 tight end, but you would vision Bowers more as a playmaker, like those top-tier tight ends in the NFL. I mentioned a minute ago, he's not much of a blocker, but kind of that move role. He's nice with the ball in his hands, and I mean I don't really think there's a lot of controversy with this pick, other than thinking that the Jets would go offensive tackle. Tyron Smith is going to miss the first 10 games of the season. They just signed him from the Cowboys, but it's more important to take the swing on Bowers, and if he can really provide an impact role. They have Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, now Mike Williams joins the fold in what is probably going to be Aaron Rodgers' last season in the NFL. Try and make that run to the Super Bowl, or at least win 11 games and get to the dance. We both mentioned we got J.J. McCarthy at 11. We'll try and move through these a bit faster as we get to the second half of the mock. And I do want to say, as we exit the top 10, Kelin and I have been doing this for 7 years, and I have, taken the time to mark the results of each of our prior mock drafts. And there's a website, you can look it up. It's like mockdraftscores.com. That has the 5-year averages of the best mock drafter analysts in the NFL sphere, and like national guys or local newspaper guys. My 5-year average, if you put 2 points to players being picked to the correct team that you predicted, as well as predicting the correct players that end up in the first round, I average about 42.6 points per draft. Which puts me like just outside of the top 5 of those local and national guys. Kellen's at 40, and that puts him just inside the top 20. So I think, even without being connected to the NFL, we're pretty reliable in these mock drafts. And so we'll keep it moving outside of the top 10. We're usually pretty good on the top 10.
Just to touch on J.J., Minnesota, for Michigan fans that are maybe invested in J.J.'s future, Minnesota is arguably the best landing spot for a rookie quarterback in this class, getting to throw the football to Justin Jefferson, to Jordan Addison, and to T.J. Hawkinson. Can't ask for much more than that. I think you can argue that's the best receiving core in the league, and an excellent play caller and offensive-friendly head coach in Kevin O'Connell. I think that's a slam-dunk landing spot for J.J., who likely would sit behind Sam Darnold for at least half the season. That's the big knock on J.J. is that he needs some time to sit and develop. But the sky's the limit for him if he's able to take the time to develop into the NFL system and then next season
he's 21 and
getting that receiving core.
Daniels is 23. Nix is 24. Penix is almost 25. It's worth it to take the 21-year-old guy. We both have Latu at 12 here to Denver. They take the best available defender. Latu's had some medical concerns, but he's a really great technician. I think Denver could do any sort of things with this pick. But a more interesting one, I think, is the next one.
Wouldn't be shocked to see Denver go quarterback here.
Yeah.
Bo Nix has been connected to them throughout the
They'd
process. I agree that this is likely a spot where they trade back in, but Denver, a quarterback-needy team at 12.
13, I got J.C. Latham as the second offensive lineman out the board pretty late. A lot of people think it'll be Tennessee or Chicago, but 13 Latham. Maybe they trade up with him falling. A lot of buzz has been on Latham going in the top 5 to L.A. or the top 10 to a team like Tennessee, but I just don't see it. He's a right tackle. He's really athletic. I actually have him number 10 right now in my big board. I just wouldn't take him in the top 10 or, that firmly in the top 10 at this point. But Raiders end up with their right tackle. And then Kelin, we talked about Byron Murphy. You have the Raiders taking him. Yeah,
the best defensive player left on the board. Raiders get a big impact defender there. We touched on Murphy. He's an excellent pick there at 13.
Yeah, and then you have the Saints right after at 14, taking J.C. Latham as the second or the third offensive lineman for you off the board. The Saints need a tackle really badly. Ryan Ramczyk getting into his 30s. They like those big body offensive linemen. I think that's a good pick. Speaking of big body offensive linemen, I have the Saints taking Talisa Fuaga out of Oregon State. He is massive. If you want to see a guy just run over dudes, Fuaga is excellent. I think the knock on him that's going to caused him to slip a little bit maybe in this draft is he's not exactly the most fluid. He's a little stiff. A lot of teams predict him moving into guard. That's something you see from a lot of these tackle prospects. A lot of teams think they may be better on the interior. But if you can take a starting right tackle, who I think Fuaga can be that for the Saints right now with the situation they're in, which is always so weird, I think that's a good pick. Indianapolis, I think, is a weird situation, Kelin.
Yeah, we really differ here. I have them with the first kind of really different pick of the draft. I have them going Xavier Worthy at 15, which is a lot higher than a lot of people expect him to go. But I think this is a really fun pairing with Anthony Richardson, a guy that can throw the ball a mile, get the fastest player in the draft. Xavier Worthy broke the combine 40-yard dash record. Let him go out there and chase after footballs deep down the field from Anthony Richardson. I think he pairs well with Michael Pittman, who likes to operate more in the middle of the field.
Yeah, I really like Worthy there for the Colts. In my top 50, he's not exactly highly ranked. I still think he has a lot of room to grow, but that speed, you can't teach it. That's a big jump. 15, he's my 46 prospect. I have them taking the Colts. I have them taking Quinyon Mitchell, first cornerback off the board from Toledo. Very sticky, man-to-man corner. He's aggressive. A lot of ball production in the MAC, but that's the thing. That's my knock on him. He played in the MAC. I like Terrion Arnold a little bit better, who is Alabama's #1 corner this season. But Mitchell goes to the Colts at a position of need. And, Kelin, you have the Seahawks falling into Quinyon Mitchell to pair with Devon Witherspoon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a fantastic situation for Seattle, who will now have a dominant defensive backfield with Mitchell, last year's pick, Witherspoon, and a couple of other young players that they have there, kind of recreating that Legion of Boom almost. That's a slam dunk pick for Seattle that gets a talent that should be going in the top 15 to fall to them at 16.
Yeah, and you never really know what Seattle's going to do. They've traded down a lot. I have them taking Graham Barton, who's a very athletic offensive line prospect from Duke, who's kind of been flying up draft boards here lately. They visited with him, and they do need a tackle, but I could see them going any which way. We probably got to steam through this now with 9 minutes left. Half the first round to go. Amarius Mims, my first big jump, I think. Jacksonville takes the tackle from Georgia at 16. Only 9 starts in college. Jacksonville really likes those raw Georgia prospects. Kelin, you got Jared Verse.
I have Jared Verse, kind of the opposite there. Verse started off at Albany and transferred to Florida State. Super productive in college and a guy with a really high motor. A lot of teams like him. I have him going 17 to Jacksonville to pair with Josh Allen on the edge.
Then you have Fuaga to Cincinnati, who we already talked about. That's a good pick for them, needing an offensive lineman. I have them taking Terrion Arnold, who got some buzz closer to the draft here, going to Cincinnati. I think they really have a mission to create the best defensive backfield in the league. Pair him with Daxton Hill. DJ Turner. Like scrappy guys in Cincinnati. We both have Troy Fautanu, the offensive tackle from Washington, going to the LA Rams at 19. Big knock on him for me, he's 24 years old. He can play any position on the offensive line. He's a fantastic technician, but he's 24. The Rams aren't shy. Byron Young had a great rookie season last year for the Rams. He's now 25, only entering his second season. So they're fine getting those maybe lower ceiling guys, high floor. I think Fautanu is a definition of a high floor. I think he can start immediately for them and protect Matthew Stafford and get them winning. Pittsburgh, need an offensive lineman, but which one? Kelin, you got Amarius Mims for them.
I do have Mims. They went Georgia last year at tackle, and they're going to dip right back into that same bucket to go pick up Mims, who's young, a little raw, but a guy with a high ceiling.
Yeah, I think they really like him, but in my mock, I had Olu Fashanu falling all the way to 20. Maybe Pittsburgh jumps up for him. But Fashanu, to me, is a pure pass protector, but I think a lot of teams are going to be turned off by his kind of lack of physicality at offensive tackle. Guys like Fuaga and Latham are a bit more nasty, and teams like that, but Pittsburgh just has Fashanu fall to him. Miami, another interesting thing. These 20 to 32 picks, you never know what's going to happen. I got Nate Wiggins from Clemson, the cornerback. Kelin, you have Graham Barton falling to Miami, and then Philadelphia might trade up for Terrion Arnold. You have him going 22 there. I have Tyler Guyton, a raw offensive line prospect from Oklahoma.
And I think that's a slam dunk pick for Philly if they're able to get Terrion Arnold to slide to them at 22. Arnold is my favorite corner in the class, just a dog that loves playing on the outside, takes it upon himself to shut down the other team's best receiver, and I think that's a slam dunk pick for an Eagles defense that is in desperate need of help. Barton to Miami at 21 is another excellent fit. Help protect the interior of that offensive line and keep Tua upright.
And I have Jared Verse at 23 here to Minnesota. I think he's a very talented edge rusher. If I look at my top 50, I have him fairly high at 15, so that's a good pick for Minnesota. He's my edge one ahead of Dallas Turner and Laiatu Latu. He's so powerful, and I think he'd be the perfect Daniil Hunter replacement. Kelin, you have them going for kind of a really different pass rusher in Chop Robinson, who relies on his speed.
Yeah, Chop Robinson out of Penn State. He absolutely destroyed Michigan when they played them in Penn State earlier in the season. Michigan ran that ball exclusively, essentially, in the second half, and that was because of Chop Robinson. Michigan couldn't block him, and I think Minnesota is going to want to go ahead and get this guy who's the best remaining edge on the board.
Yep. And the next these 3 picks, we have them take each of these teams taking the same position but different players. So we both had edge there for Minnesota. We both have offensive tackle for Dallas. I have Kingsley Suamataia from BYU going to Dallas. They had him in for a visit a few days ago. With Tyler Guyton off the board, Suamataia is the last, I think, pure pass pro prospect. That's a lot of P's for Dallas instead of a guy that might be more of a guard. They really need an offensive tackle right now. They need to win. Kelin, you have them going for Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. Next up, Green Bay. You have them with Kool-Aid McKinstry, the cornerback, opposite Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. I have Cooper DeJean from Iowa, who's a fantastic do-it-all player. I actually see him more as a nickel corner safety type. I don't know if you can exactly rely on him against outside receivers in the NFL. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think McKinstry, better outside corner. That's what Green Bay might be looking for, going up against Justin Jefferson and DJ Moore in the NFC North. But Cooper DeJean coming off that injury, but not something we're super concerned about going into next year.
I have the first wide receiver since Rome Odunze for me coming off the board here to Tampa at 26. Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. They might have to trade up for him. Nobody really knows where he's going to go. He could go anywhere from the late teens to out of the first round. He's got some medical issues that have popped up, but Tampa gets a guy to replace Mike Evans once Mike Evans retires, and maybe Chris Godwin as well. Kelin has the Buccaneers taking Nate Wiggins to replace Sean Murphy-Bunting, to replace Carlton Davis, and whoever else in that backfield, Jamel Dean, that they might have to move on from shortly. Move through. I think we want to get a little more discussion on the Lions, so I want to move through these a little bit quicker. Arizona, I have them taking Chop Robinson, Kellen Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. The Bills, really needing a wide receiver, I have them taking Xavier Worthy with him off the board. Kelin has Brian Thomas Jr. going there. And now to the Lions at 29. I have Jackson Powers Johnson, the offensive lineman out of Oregon. He's played center. He's played guard. He's like a bowling ball, and I think he fits in right now at guard, and I think he can move to center when it seems like Frank Ragnow is going to retire fairly shortly from the comments he's made. And I think Jackson Powers Johnson, he's only like 20 years old, can step right in there. Already took a 20-year-old offensive lineman from Oregon, and he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer in Penny Sewell, so why not do it again?
Yeah, I like the pick, and Jackson Powers Johnson fills a need for Detroit. I have them going Johnny Newton, a guy that they went to his pro day. They seem like they really like him. A big guy in the middle of that defense that really shores up that defensive front, can provide some interior pass rush as well. I think Detroit is in a nice spot here because there's a handful of needs, but there's not one player that's going to fix this team. So they're in a spot where if a corner slips and they want to trade up for a guy like a Terrion Arnold, absolutely a possibility. They're also a team that I think could very easily trade out in the end of the first round if there's a team like Las Vegas or Denver that wants to jump back in to pick up a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix. I think that's about a possibility as well.
And here in the early 30s, Detroit, anything's possible under Brad Holmes. Whoever he wants, he's going to go get in this draft. I'm pretty sure of that. Next 2 picks we actually have is the same. Braden Fisk and Marshawn Nealon to Baltimore and San Francisco, respectively. They're 2 of my favorite players in this draft class. Braden Fisk, 2 visits to the Ravens in the pre-draft process, and Marshawn Nealon seemed to visit with half the NFL over the past 2 weeks out of Western Michigan. Braden Fisk actually transferred from Western to Florida State, which is cool that these guys could go back-to-back in this draft. I think Baltimore could trade out and still get Fisk. I just think they like him. San Francisco, he pairs well with the Bosas, or well, the one Bosa. And then I have Kansas City taking Patrick Paul to round it out. Kelin with Kingsley Suamataia, another offensive tackle, but still available for him. Any last thoughts as we exit the DSR?
I think there's going to be some trades in the last 4 or 5 picks of this draft of teams trying to jump back in to get a quarterback. Buffalo at 28 has been rumored to jump up to get a receiver. We both had them getting some speedsters toward the bottom of the draft, but we'll see if one of these top 3 guys gets past Tennessee. Would not be shocked to see Buffalo try to jump up towards 8.
So we're going to sign off for this DSR fairly shortly. We'd like to thank you for joining us tonight at 8 o'clock. We'll be back on YouTube, as we're on YouTube as well as we're on FM, for the first round live at the NFL Draft. We've got a lot more content planned for you. Me and Kelin will be here for the next 90 minutes, sitting around waiting for that to start. We hope that you join us, and thank you for joining us tonight. Our last DSR together. Kelin, it's been a pleasure. We'll see you guys in 90 minutes on YouTube. I got to fill 10 more seconds with nothing.
With that, we'll leave you as we always do with a good night and a go blue.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in on YouTube. We'll be back in 90 minutes with a new stream, so it'll be a new link, but stay on the WCBN Sports YouTube page. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye. We'll be back, though.